Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on another very special episode of She Builds Tech Skills North America. My name is Pragya. I'm a customer solutions leader at AWS and also a She Builds core team member. Joining me at today's episode is Raj. Raj, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Rajeshwari Maladi. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect in AWS based out of our New York office. I am also a Sheebles core team member and very excited to join you guys today in this episode.
Thank you, Raj. And for folks that join us and have seen our past episodes, this episode is a little bit different, but extremely exciting and inspiring for Raj and I because we recorded this episode with our guests at the Women of the Cloud Summit in New York in July 2023. Raj and I, along with some of our other core team members, had the pleasure of attending this very unique event in New York. And the event really brought together women and allies in the tech community at one place and truly highlighted the power of representation and why equity and intentional allyship is so important. We also talked about, the latest technical trends, but my favorite part was talking to diverse leaders from different parts of the industry, as well as attendees that came from many different segments and very diverse backgrounds. So it was truly, truly inspiring to be there in the presence and being able to speak to some of these folks that were there. Raj, you were there with me. What was your favorite part of the summit?
Hey Pragya, to just align to what you said earlier, I think my favorite part of that Women of the Cloud Summit was the opportunity for us to actually meet and network with other women technology leaders and allies, both internal and external, and to learn and get inspiration from their diverse career journeys, and also learn about some of the programs that they are incorporating within their organizations to further improve diversity and inclusion in the organizations.
Agree. Yeah, that really resonated with me as well. So we definitely came back very energized from that event. We look forward to doing more of these for our She Builds Tech Skills listeners. So without further delay, we're going to cue in the recording of a session that Raj and I did with Deirdre Toner, who's a leader at AWS, and Mark and Daniela, who are leaders at Job Target and made time to speak to us at the event. And as you'll see in their conversation, we focused a lot on inclusion and diversity in technology, unconscious bias, and then we also touched upon Gen AI and the role that this technology is now playing in the context of driving diversity and inclusion in tech. So with that, let's cue in the video.
And my name is Rajeshwari Maladi. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect with AWS, and I'm also a core team member for the She Builds Tech Skills North America. We are very excited today to be here at the AWS Women of the Cloud event to connect with the community and also connect with our business leaders who are driving business outcomes with inclusion. Today I have with me my co-host Pragya. Pragya, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so excited to be here. My name is Pragya. I am a customer solutions manager at AWS and also part of the She Builds Tech Skills core team. Super excited to be here at the Women of the Cloud event in New York and also to welcome our guests that have made the time to stop by and speak to us. I'll start quickly by introducing them to our viewers. Deirdre Toner, Director, leading our data teams at AWS as part of the Worldwide Specialist Org. Mark Oreta, CTO at Job Target, and Daniela Lewis, Director of HR at Job Target. Thank you so much all for taking the time to stop by and talk to us.
All right. So we'll kick it off with our question to Deirdre. So Deirdre, if you can talk to us about your journey into tech and your biggest challenges.
Yeah, I was very good at math, so it just so happened. So I stumbled into tech and I went to engineering school on a scholarship. So that was very handy. But I realized while I was learning to code and everything, I really wanted more of a customer-facing role. So I moved more to what we call go-to-market or sales roles early in my career, solution architect roles. And it was just interesting for me because at the time there was very few, even less people that looked like me in the role. I was the only girl in engineering school, and I was a ballerina on the side, so I didn't really fit in. But I love the math, and my mother would tell you I was a very bold child. I was very competitive. I had 2 older brothers, and they were so nice. They taught me that I could do whatever they could do, and they helped me along. But I just thought in my own head, well, I can do this. And so when I went into the industry, the challenges were largely cultural. When I started, there was no sensitivity training, so you can imagine like the bad behavior that went on. But I also really felt like I had to prove myself at a level beyond the others. And because I'm competitive in some ways, I think that was an advantage because I got really, really good at what I did, and I could really deliver results. And I encourage everyone to make sure, whatever you choose, you know your craft and you show up. But I was really expected to over deliver on that front. Again, happy to do that. But the biggest part of it was I felt like I couldn't bring my gender to work. I had to be one of the guys, right? So they don't want whiny girls around. So I developed some bad habits during that time. I acted very masculine. I acted like one of the boys. That impacted my social life quite a bit for a long time. I was single until I was in my 40s. And, so I paid the price for that. But I think that, there's challenges now that are similar and different. But, at the time, I really felt like I had to be one of the guys and be very cognizant of that all the time. And so to this day, like I'm probably the last one to raise my hand and complain about something. So some of those habits I learned about, don't be the whiny one and not bringing my gender to work, stood with me for a long time. Now, fortunately, later in life, I learned that being vulnerable makes you a good leader, right? And bringing your authentic self to work is good. And obviously, I've embraced the femininity. I don't wear blue business suits with a tie to work anymore. But it took a while to go through that. So I think some of those challenges still persist today for people who don't feel like they look like the others.
Just being yourself and that's excellent.
I love it. I think it's such a meaningful lesson to be your authentic self, and that will take you far, but it takes a while sometimes to discover that about yourself. On that topic, I'd love to hear from you, Daniela. You obviously focus on hiring diverse talent at Job Target. How do you nurture that talent, help them bring out their authentic self at work?
Yeah, so, it's actually been really interesting these last 2 years at Job Target. We've just grown so much. And it was a time when we were growing and there were, talent shortages. It was hard to find the right talent. And so one of the things that we continue to do is try to find people that have different backgrounds and have different skills. And so, for example, having engineers that might not have a traditional 4-year degree, but might have a certificate from a boot camp or career changers. We had a lot of people in the pandemic that changed careers. And so we have people that are in sales or customer experience that might not have the traditional sales background, but have been able to join. And I think we do a good job on fostering their own experiences to help develop and have them be in an inclusive culture.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely do our very, very best to recruit people that are outside of the norms in order to try to bring their identities in. And one of the things we've struggled with a little bit is that through the pandemic, because of remote work, people can't really come to work. So there aren't these opportunities to get to know each other. So you just have to be infinitely more intentional about it. You can see what they're wearing. Hey, tell me about what you have in your background. That little figurine right there. What does that mean to you? What does that decoration mean on the side? What does that map mean? Where are you traveling? You have to teach that to your team to be more inclusive, because otherwise it's just work, and you don't ever get to know anybody, and you just miss so much.
And especially interviewing people too remotely, you have to find ways to really try to understand their whole background and feed off of that as well.
That's true. No, that makes so much sense. Thank you for sharing that. On the topic of that, Mark, share with us if there was something you knew your younger self when you were getting started with your career in tech.
So for me, one of the most painful lessons that took a very long time for me to learn was that technology is a lot more than just the ones and zeros, right? You get into technology because you're so curious. How does that microphone work? I want to open it up, pick it apart, and you think that is the root of the tech. How do the machines come together? How does the electricity flow? And then you get into college, and then they reinforce that, and then you go down into the workplace, and you continue to think that. But then at some point, hopefully, a light switch flips, and then you realize, you know what? all of this stuff has to interact with everything else. And it's not just about how does the microphone work, but is it the right height? Can it catch everybody? How does it interact with imperfect people? And how does it improve people who are imperfect? And you try to take that and then you try to bring it together.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't think I thought of that when I was starting my career.
Thank
you.
That's some great insights. Thanks, Mark and Daniel. So Deirdre, you lead a large data team at AWS. So I'm curious to know how you see data changing our world.
Yeah, it's well, we've known for a while now, some of us longer than others, that data is the fuel, the gold, maybe the water. That's basically the lifeblood of the economy and of businesses. But, you know, on another level, we see there's a saying that data could save the planet. And I think there's other noble purposes that we should get really serious about. A lot of organizations are using data now to start measuring what they're doing around sustainability. Unfortunately, studies show that organizations are not using data yet to measure their diversity, right? And so without a mechanism and measurements for something, it's just wasted money. In the US alone, customers are spending $8 billion a year on diversity training with very little results. So that's one thing. But I think what's happening when we see with Gen AI, right, and what's happening, we're gonna remove some careers from the workplace, right, that are kind of what we think of here at Amazon. It's like heavy lifting and rote work, like building data pipelines. Well, we can automate a lot of that now. But the good news is that now this opens up new careers for a new pool of talent with different skills that are not as STEM related, which is one of the barriers to diverse workforces. So we think these skills include storytelling, creativity, right? Collaboration, understanding this context that you were describing of the business environment. Where does this data go in? Does this make sense? So use it this way. So we're hoping this opens up some of the barriers that we see for women entering and girls entering the field, because you know, we still hear too often, like I talked about earlier, about not looking like the others. Too often people are like, I'm the only woman in the room. I don't see people that look like me. I wish there were more that look like me. And then when they do show up, because people don't look like you, tends to trigger in, especially more heavily in the female population, things like imposter syndrome. And we just had an amazing guest speaker, and I'll speak earlier about how this impacts people. And there's a lot we can do on that as individuals to tackle our own burdens with imposter syndrome. There's actually workshops you can take to help rewire your brain so it doesn't impact you anymore. So I think once you get in the workplace, if you find a path into the career via creativity or storytelling, make sure you're prepared to be bold and speak out and not let that hold you back.
Excellent.
I think it's so important too that when you don't fit in, that's actually a good thing, and that should be reinforced, because if everyone looks the same and sounds the same, you get the same ideas and you don't solve any problems and you don't innovate. So being different brings a different perspective that can bring new solutions, which actually make the entire team better. You just have to be able to speak your mind.
And it's proven to help make organizations more money.
Yep.
We have a new study out of that. I'll be speaking about it later. Yes, organizations are more successful. Almost three times more likely to report like 10% earnings increases when they have higher diversity scores.
Wow, there you have it. Complete data. That's true.
Excellent. So thanks, Deirdre, Mark, and Daniel, for sharing your insights on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we learned how, being a diverse workforce can actually drive innovation in your organization, how you can use data to further bridge that gender gap in the workforce. So excellent. Thanks for sharing your insights, and have a wonderful rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was so, I'm rejuvenated. It's bringing all the good vibes from that session that we recorded at the Women of the Cloud Summit, and a very pleasant and exciting surprise for our folks that are watching. We have our guests from the session joining us live today at this episode. So I want to welcome Mark, Oreta, Deirdre, and Daniela. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I want to say I took away a lot of good key messages from attending the Women of the Cloud Summit, but especially from the one that we did with you all. As you can see, I'm embracing my pink today in ode to Deidre, your session. Love my pink. I can say, Mark, I have taken what you said about having those intentional small conversations when you're in virtual meetings. I took that to heart. I was like, that is such an easy way to just break the ice and start that conversation. So a question now that we have you here, and some time has passed since we were all together in July at the Women of the Cloud Summit. As you reflect back, why do you think an event like that is relevant, is important? And what are some of the things that you took away from that you've implemented in your personal life or in your professional roles? Perhaps we can start with you, Mark.
Yep. So for me, I think those events matter because it's easy to be dismissive when someone's like, oh yeah, we want equality and diversity matters, and you just put it to the side and you don't really think about it. And then you get into these sessions and you hear these people speak, and then some small messages resonate. And one of the ones that was brought up was, I really wish I remember her name, but she was the one who said it was like all the F's to work. And it was, I think she was a comedian, and she brought an interesting way of thinking about how to bring humor and how to embrace failure and how to do all of those kinds of things. And how you can use that to help the people who are afraid to fail and are afraid to branch out. And I've tried to do that on the various people that I mentored, but I think she was probably the one that impacted my day-to-day most.
I hear you. I think that was Erin Deal. I saw her session as well. She was very impactful. Thank you for sharing, Mark. Deirdre, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I've agreed to actually work with a couple of more women. I do some mentoring here at AWS, and I've taken on a couple more, earlier in their career, but females who are aspiring to different sorts of roles, and agreed to kind of help do that. I think it's super important that we all lean in and mentor and sponsor, and so I think doing both is important. It's, like you said, it's a rejuvenation of the thoughts that we took away from this session. The other thing that really struck me was I think it was an important event because it gets people together talking about it. I think we could see from the response that it was very well received, and people were grateful for a chance to come together. I think it's, we have the saying about good intentions, right? So it's not just about having good intentions. You have to build mechanisms and actually like measure what you're doing and put things in place to actually make a material change. And I feel like we can see from the response of these events, this one and other ones that have been done around the world, that it's time to get really intentional about making change and not just talking about it. We validated that there's interest and value in getting people together on the topic, and now it's time to mobilize.
100%.
But before you move on, I do think that's also important what you were saying, like bringing the people together allowed. So I invited some various members from my team out, and it allowed us to have some conversations that I hadn't had before because we hadn't really thought about it. So even though I had worked for a number of years with many of them, like these are just not conversations we had. So just having that more open conversation and being intentional about it was also, I think, an important part. Just taking a step and valuing that time. Sorry.
No, I appreciate that. As a leader, Mark, you're obviously the CTO. You making that statement, bringing people, we're going to make time for this. It makes a statement. So yeah, thank you for that, Mark. Daniela?
Yeah, so this was actually my first time that I had ever gone to an event like AWS and participated. So just being there and being with such inspiring people was an experience in itself. And like Mark and Deirdre kind of mentioned, I think it's taking what I learned, even just with some coworkers after we were talking about it, and it's, yes, we've done some things to move forward, but we can definitely do more. And so just having that kind of reset button of like, okay, like what can we do more? How can we, just be more in tune within the space? So that was definitely a big takeaway for me. Just even thinking about some of the questions that you posed for us, it was just a good reflection. So it was great.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Like I said, we are so excited and super stoked that you're back here, making time in your busy day to join us.
Yeah. Thanks again, guys, for joining us. And so for our viewers, if you have to say, what is it that top technologies or some guidance that you can give our audience on what they can prepare on to make them even more for them to have more opportunities in the near future? What is some guidance that you would like to give our viewers? So we'll start with Mark.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought was interesting that I wasn't expecting after participating in the event were the number of people who reached out to me and said, hey, would you be willing to do X? And I generally am very, very happy to, but what surprised me was that when I was talking to some of them, they were like, I never thought that I could just reach out, that people would receive this. Like I had a couple of people who were looking for internships. I had some other people wanting to start projects. And I know that we always tend to sometimes put the onus on the individual, but in this case, I want to reassure people that if you do reach out, I think you'll be better. You'll be more well received than you think. You don't have to have that fear of what if they ignore me, or what if they say no, or what if they're not as nice of a person when I actually speak to them as when I saw or interacted with them. But also just, if you can, just be okay with it. Like if I didn't answer to them, I don't know that it would have changed their world or not.
Yeah.
But the fact that they reached out, they took a chance, and I would encourage people to take more of those chances, because I've developed some brief at this point, because they're still relatively new, but new relationships that I think will eventually help them in their future journeys.
Great. So definitely more networking and being okay if you don't hear from people, but then just keep trying and be persistent, right?
And reach out. I mean, even if it's just a glimmer of a thought, you're like, you know what, I did this on a whim. Great, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Some of the coolest relationships I've ever had were just developed on this random meeting that you meet someone.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark, for that. Deirdre, anything you would like to say?
Yeah, first to add to that, like fortune favors the bold, right? So nothing ventured, nothing gained. There's so many anecdotes we could say, like get comfortable with the fact you might hear back, and then everything's upside from there. I think in terms of like specific jobs, because I'm in the analytics space, I see like around the world the amount of skill gaps that there are in the analytics field. And now if you think about analytics extending into AI and into Gen AI, I think if you're looking to find a niche for yourself where you've got the job security and demand, where you can shop for the best job, certainly a space to look at. It doesn't mean what it used to mean. As I mentioned in the talk you just played, it used to be like Python, right, and computer science. Not necessarily, especially with Gen AI. So understanding how to pull the data together and apply business context, and what prompts are needed for storytelling or to generate the right X, name whatever it is, using Gen AI is going to become a really important skill. So as the skill gap increases with Gen AI, I think there's other people that can think about, or other aptitudes that are important to fill the skill gap.
Excellent. And what are some resources that you think that you recommend? Like, I know you yourself like run a very large data organization. What are some resources that you recommend to our viewers?
You caught me off guard without having a bunch of links so I can follow up with you. But I think you'll find a lot of the universities, even like for online learning, are increasing the amount of curriculum that's associated with these fields so that you can augment skills. But we'll follow up with some of that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And Daniela, going to you, what is your recommendation for our audience?
Yeah, so I think as much as you can be yourself and authentic, especially if you're interviewing, I think there's a difference between being prepared and coming to interview, what you're applying for, and knowing the company and all of that. But I think if you can just find a way to be yourself, to be authentic, that will definitely resonate with the hiring manager or the recruiter or whoever is speaking to you. And I think that will help you. I think a lot of times you can have people that are very well prepared, and you can tell that they have this guard because they're nervous or whatnot. But I think as much as you can kind of show them who you really are, it's going to help you. It's going to help the company and the relationship for sure if it ends up, going your way.
And Daniela, how much do you think, when applying, I know every rec has a certain requirements, and what should be the fit, or what is it that you see successful, right? Because obviously no one is going to have 100% fit with their skills and the requirement, but since you work with so many people on the hiring, what would you recommend is a good fit that people can proceed?
Do you mean like in terms of their resume or in the conversation or?
Yeah, in general, like, total resume conversation and
yeah, I mean, I think a good, well-polished resume goes a long way, as just like that's the first impression that an employer gets. But I think going beyond that, just, highlighting things that might not be able to be presented in a resume when you're having those conversations definitely go a long way as well. And then being able to relay those to the hiring manager. But anything that can just highlight your critical thinking, your ability to adapt and to learn, I think is definitely a great way to kind of show yourself apart from others.
Great. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks for those insights.
Yeah, super helpful. I want to thank everyone of you here, Daniela, Deirdre, and Mark, for again taking out time on your busy schedule to join us. For our audience that's been listening, I think we've had some really good takeaways. Again, I didn't know if we were gonna be up the session that we recorded, but I really love the theme around if you're looking, if you're early in your career, exploring a career in tech, or you're looking to change or explore something new. Look at upskilling, look at the field of data analytics. Don't be discouraged if you think that you don't have the skills that you traditionally thought are needed. There is a whole new set of skills that are needed in terms of storytelling, especially in the field of Gen AI. Be bold, be authentic. And as always, you can always reach out to Raj and myself and other members of the She Builds core team on LinkedIn. If you need resources or if you're looking for mentorship or guidance, we're there to support you. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to our audience watching. If you're watching us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel for She Builds Tech Skills North America so that you can join us on our next session that targets technology trends, inclusion, and diversity in tech. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, Raj.